Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahawashi, Bahasham, Barakahakodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders, the great millstone who ruled and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Mark chapter 3, verses 24 to 25. And this is Yahawashi Hamashayak, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus Christ, speaking. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And it's pretty clear to see that the kingdom and the house of these Edomites, or so-called white people, is clearly divided, especially in the United States of America, which is biblically known as Babylon the Great, as well as spiritual Sodom and Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8. At just about every level of society where there could be some form of division, these Edomites in the United States of America are divided at. Conservative Edomites against liberal Edomites, with the Republicans versus the Democrats. So-called straight Edomites against Edomites in the alphabet group beginning with LG. Young Edomites against older Edomites with the millennials versus the baby boomers. So-called religious Edomites against atheistic Edomites. Edomite children against their parents, the Edomite man against his woman with feminism versus MGTOW, the average Joe Edomite against the Edomites in the government, city Edomites against Edomites in the country, the list goes on. And all these different movements, like so-called wokeism, or political correctness, or cancel culture, or the alt-right that's really popped up over these past 10 years, has only further exacerbated these divisions in the kingdom of the Edomites in the United States of America. And it's only going to get worse from here on out until there's actually Edomites killing each other on the streets of the United States of America. And it's only going to be further exacerbated when hyperinflation really kicks in. People start getting kicked out of their houses. People can't find jobs, or the jobs that people do have, they lose them. The government starts further intruding on people's rights. The list goes on. And this is very beautiful times we're living in, Akim, because we're at the end of the rulership of these Edomites, especially in the United States of America. And as it says in Sirach or Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, chapter 27, one of the most beautiful things to see is the downfall of your enemies. And I'll be profiling an article from RT.com just to further document the division of the house and the kingdom of these Edomites. The title of this article is 66% of Republicans in the southern U.S. and nearly half of the West Coast Democrats want to secede from country as division grows. Again, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand, and a house divided against itself cannot stand. Amid political division and constant culture wars, 2/3 of Republicans in the southern United States and almost half of West Coast Democrats want to secede from the country and form their own nation, according to a new poll. A poll released on Wednesday by Brightline Watch and YouGov reveals that a large portion of Americans from across the U.S. want their regional area to secede from the Union, with Southern Republicans and West Coast Democrats apparently the most dissatisfied with the status quo. In total, 44% of Southerners support secession, with 66% of Republicans expressing a desire for the South to part ways with Washington. Half of Southern independents also expressed support for secession, as did 20% of Democrats in the region. Over on the West Coast, which includes Alaska and Hawaii, there was less desire to break away, with a total of 39% of Americans expressing support for secession. But here, Democrats were the most likely to want to secede at 47%, followed by independents at 33% and Republicans at 27%. Though the South and the West Coast were the two U.S. regions with the most desire to break free, numbers were also high in the rest of the country. In the northeastern United States, 34% of Americans said they want to secede from the Union, with Democrats and independents at 39% and 35% respectively, while 26% of northeastern Republicans felt the same. Meanwhile, around one-third of Americans in the mountain states want to break off from the U.S., with Republicans at 43%, independents at 35%, and Democrats at 17%. Brightline Watch described the numbers as distressingly high, while data journalist Christopher Ingraham called it the most disturbing data point I've seen in a while. Though Ingraham noted that most of the Americans expressing support for secession are likely just partisan signaling, he claimed that part of the reason support for secession is so high in the GOP is that party elites all over the country are irresponsibly ginning up passions on it. Ingraham's analysis, however, did not take into consideration the high number of Democrats and independents across the U.S. who also express support for secession. From Christopher Ingraham's Twitter page, most disturbing data point I've seen in a while. 2/3 of Southern Republicans now say the South should break away from the Union, up from 50% in January. And here's a little infographic. Secession, support for seceding from the U.S. to form a new regional union. In the Pacific, at 39%, 47% of Democrats, 33% of independents, and 27% of Republicans. In the mountain area, 32%, 17% of Democrats, 35% of independents, and 43% of Republicans. In the heartland, 30%, 19% of Democrats, 43% of independents, 34% of Republicans. In the South, at 44%, 20% of Democrats, 50% of independents, and 66% of Republicans. In the Northeast, 34%, 39% of Democrats, 35% of independents, and Republicans at 26%. Hey, the United States of America is finished. As you can see from this infographic, the country's not just broke up into two parts, it's broke up into about 5 different sections. And like I said earlier, this is going to all culminate in these Americans from all different walks of life killing each other on the streets of America. And a lot of you 2/3 of the nation of Israel are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans who are coons and want to be a part of this American Babylonian system and still cleave unto these Edomites. You're going to get caught up in the Civil War and get butchered in the streets. Americans in the U.S. heartland are apparently most satisfied with support for secession, lowest there at around 30%. Support for secession in the U.S. is unlikely to fall anytime soon, and it won't, because this is all a part of biblical prophecy, the kingdom and the house of the Edomites being divided. With Brightline Watch noting that the numbers have risen in the past 6 months since the January 6th storming of the Capitol by Donald Trump supporters in protest at President Joe Biden's election. The most notable secession in U.S. history took place in the 1860s when the southern states of South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Texas, Alabama, Virginia, Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, and North Carolina broke off from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America, sparking the American Civil War. And there will be a second American Civil War. And besides that taking place in the United States of America, there are going to be race wars in America. There's going to be famines, pestilences, a state of martial law, and ultimately 200 million nuclear missiles hitting this place, turning it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. Let's get into some precepts. This is Isaiah chapter 19, verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, the modern day spiritual Egyptians in spiritual Egypt, these Edomites in the United States of America. Like I've been saying throughout the video, besides being known as Babylon the Great in the scriptures, the United States of America is known as spiritual Sodom and Egypt as pursuant to Revelation 11 verse 8. And the reason for that is because this modern day spiritual Egypt shares a lot of similar characteristics to ancient Egypt. For one, it's serving as a place of hardcore bondage and slavery for the children of Israel, who are again the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, as ancient Egypt did. And this place uses a lot of the same idols, practices, and symbolism that ancient Egypt had. Just look at the back of your $1 bill with the pyramid, the Washington Monument, which is an obelisk. You've got a bunch of pyramids all around the United States of America, places named after ancient places in Egypt, such as Memphis, and then beer and bread, which are real big in the United States of America, were big staples back in ancient Egypt. Shaving your face was a custom of ancient Egypt. Getting your hair lined up was a custom of ancient Egypt. The list goes on and on. If you just study, you can see that the parallels are almost uncanny. And they shall fight, everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom, a civil war. And as Yahushua said back in Mark chapter 3, verses 24 to 25, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand, and a house divided against itself cannot stand. And as we saw from that article on RT.com, this kingdom of the United States of America is clearly divided. Again, there will be no Make America Great Again. This is the last hurrah for the good old United States of America. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified. Just keep strong and keep pushing this word. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity and kingdom of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.